All right, joining me now is my good friend Larry Holder, Times-Picayune, NOLA.com. And what we want to do here, Larry, is talk about the roster impact of Kenny Vaccaro coming in. You got Malcolm Jenkins there already. You got Roman Harper. With Vaccaro coming in, what does this do as far as roster impact?
I'm not really sure. I'm not even really sure the Saints know, because Kenny Vaccaro, you think about him, and he could come in as a strong safety, but he could, during this whole draft process, a lot of people thought of him as a free safety. And you look at the contract situations for both Malcolm Jenkins and Roman Harper. Malcolm Jenkins is going into his final year of his contract. This is his contract year, and I had a chance to catch up with him a couple of days ago, and he said, look, this means my future here is uncertain. Roman Harper, of course, he's got the big salary cap number going into this year, and it's even bigger next year. Does Vaccaro play there? I'm not sure if he comes in and maybe does what Malcolm Jenkins does that first year. He was drafted in 2009, and Malcolm Jenkins wasn't a starter right away. He didn't start until 2010, and Malcolm Jenkins was kind of the jack-of-all-trades kind of role. Maybe you see that from Vaccaro, but I think a lot of it goes down to, what do you see in camp? Do you see Vaccaro coming in, playing strong safety, free safety? That might give us a better indication of what they do, where they line him up to start on-field situations.
And plus, we really don't know how good this kid Vaccaro is, because he played in such a screwy system at the University of Texas. We can't tell what kind of playmaker he might be.
We do at least know he had a good game defending Tavon Austin, and that tape stood out. Sean Payton even mentioned how that tape stood out. But we really don't know. I think you're right. Best safety on the board by a lot of teams, even though San Francisco thought Eric Reed was. That's why they traded up to go get the LSU product. But by most accounts, best safety on the board. And it's funny. Everyone you talk to, Saints fans who complain about the safeties, I'm curious if they're the same ones complaining about this pick. They went out and got a safety. Why are you complaining? And I think Saints fans' fears is that they're afraid Jarvis Jones is going to blow up in Pittsburgh rather than Kenny Vaccaro being a bust. So obviously we got to wait and see with all this.
Yeah, it took some of the fans about 10 seconds to start complaining
right,
about that.
Exactly.
Offensive tackle, Jermon Bushrod, of course, now with the Chicago Bears, but they go out and get Terron Armstead out of Arkansas, Pine Bluff. What does this mean as far as guys like Charles Brown are concerned at that position?
I think it really brings instant competition. I honestly do. Small school guy, we've seen it before. Jermon Bushrod, it took him a couple of years. But people also say, well, it took Jermon a couple of years. Well, Jermon had an immediate starter and a Pro Bowler in Jamal Brown when he was drafted. So it gave them a few years to kind of figure this thing out. I think it's still open season, open competition. Charles Brown still needs to prove himself. You bring in Jason Smith. He's a bust as of right now, still a bust, unless he can improve his career at some point. So I think Armstead comes in, immediately competes. Does he win the job? I'm not going to go that far, because I think it's Charles Brown's job to lose. But we've seen he's injury prone. You've got to have someone ready to go. And I think Sean Payton's really curious, and Drew Brees is really curious to see how this kid comes in and plays right away on the practice field.
Let's talk about Rufus Johnson, a good pass rusher at the D2 level. But Sean Payton has said he liked his measurables out there. What does he mean as far as mixing him with the veterans on the defensive side of the ball?
I think that's still an unknown. You look at Rufus Johnson, few people have heard of him. Even the Saints PR staff didn't have a bio to hand out to us once they made the pick. We had the
Rufus Johnson.
Exactly. So everyone was like, yeah, Rufus Johnson. But, you know, actually played well in D2, Tarleton State. Pressure guy, you're going to bring him in to maybe be a pressure guy. You kind of did the same thing as a project with Greg Romius. He hasn't panned out, had tore his ACL again after coming in with the torn ACL, but this isn't the case. They're going to put him in, see what he can do. You never know. I mean, they had undrafted rookie free agent Junior Gillette. He played fine, gave him a new deal. So it's probably one of those situations that it's a wait and see kind of a deal rather than, oh, this guy's going to come in and make an impact right away.
Well, you know, and everybody was talking about drafting to need. I personally think the Saints did do that. But then again, when you look at things and the way things are going to shape out with the new 3-4 defense, maybe there are a lot of guys who were already there, like a Gillette, that they like pretty well.
Yeah, that's true, but I think they drafted a need. Say the first pick, safety was a need. Yeah. The second pick, left tackle was a need. I think their third pick, moving, wheeling, and dealing Chris Ivory and getting John Jenkins, I think that could be their best pick as of right now. He's someone you know is going to come in and play right away. He's played on the big stage. He's a monster of a man. I saw him in person at the Senior Bowl, and you couldn't believe he's so big, but he's, he can move. He's not just some big guy who can't move around, a la, say, like Hollis Thomas, who had a weight problem and was just kind of a one-trick kind of a guy. Jenkins, I feel like, can bring something to this defense right away, and it kind of goes against what Rob Ryan did in Dallas. He liked to say, oh, we had Jay Ratliff. He was a smaller defensive tackle. Even last week, Mickey Loomis said, look, Broderick Bunkley could maybe do this. Well, guess what? They were throwing a smokescreen because they went out and got the biggest defensive tackle that was on the board. And I honestly think day one he comes in and makes the biggest impact because we don't know where Vaccaro really fits at this point.
Now, when all the 7 rounds were done, of course, the free agent signings began. Ryan Griffin, the quarterback out of Tulane, signs with the Saints. That seems to be a really nice fit.
Makes total sense. It would have stunned me if they didn't go after Ryan Griffin. Tulane ran just about the carbon copy offense that they did with the Saints. Curtis Johnson, obvious. And it wasn't Ryan Griffin's fault that Tulane had problems. I mean, he didn't have the personnel around him. Kind of like the same way with Matt Forte. Monster seasons with Tulane, and yet they didn't really win a lot of games. So I think it's a perfect fit. Does he come in and win the backup job? I don't think so, but you never know. He's practice squad for sure, but bringing in Ryan Griffin certainly makes all the sense in the world for the Saints as far as leading that undrafted rookie pack.
So one final question for you, Larry. Minicamp's still 2 weeks away. We're not even close to OTAs yet. But when you look at this roster, what kind of surprises do you possibly see happening by the time the Saints get ready for 2013?
Obviously, I think left tackle could be a surprise because we still have Charles Brown. A lot of people expect him to come in. Again, don't count Armstead out, but don't be surprised if Brown's still there. That's a position where something could happen there. And again, you look at Kenny Vaccaro. He's first-round pick. When you draft these kind of guys, you figure they're going to come in and be starters. Not necessarily the case for the Saints, but you never know. And again, go back to the point. Malcolm Jenkins, final year of his contract. Roman Harper, he's got 2 years left, but he's gigantic salary cap numbers. Could have been a salary cap chop this year. Could easily be that next year. And so that could be something. Linebacker, look at the middle. Jonathan Vilma, do we know if he can play that inside linebacker yet? I don't know. I mean, Rob Ryan's had an interview earlier this week on WWL radio and said, oh, well, he's the talk of the weight room. We still haven't seen him on the field yet, and he's not known as an inside linebacker. Who comes in there and maybe sneaks in and plays? I think there are some question marks then. You maybe could see some veteran cuts. I mean, it's not out of the ordinary for the Saints to go out and do that.
Yeah, it's a way of life in football. Change is constant, right?
Yep.
All right, Larry Holder, TimesPicayune, NOLA.com. Thank you so much for coming by, as always.